Friends, I welcome you to my channel. Before listening to this story, I will ask you to like and subscribe. It is not difficult for you, but it is pleasant for me. And we're starting. It was 5:35 a.m., and I was sitting in a booth at the Village Inn. I sipped my coffee and waited for Rachel to bring me my bacon pancakes. As I refilled my cup from the coffee pot on the table, I thought about what brought me here at this early hour. I usually went there 3 or 4 times a week, but never this early. It was actually the first time I was there when the doors opened at 5:30. I probably should have just gone home and gone to bed, but I didn't, because I knew I wouldn't get enough sleep. And even if I did, God only knows what my dreams might be. It was a story that happened 100 times a day somewhere on the third planet from the sun. The guy leaves town for 4 days, returns home 2 days earlier, and discovers that his girlfriend is not alone. I wondered how many times in these hundreds of stories the other man was a member of the family. I called Audrey to let her know that I would be home that evening instead of Saturday, but she didn't answer the phone. My flight arrived at 7, and by 8 I was already turning into the parking lot at our apartment. As I was coming around the bend, I saw Audrey come down the steps and get into a car that I recognized. I slammed on the brakes and stopped before I got close enough for her to notice me, and watched as she slid across the seat and kissed the driver. To say that I was surprised would be an understatement. Audrey always told me that she couldn't stand my brother. According to her, he was an arrogant asshole, so why did she get in his car and kiss him? Sam drove off, and I let him get a little ahead of me, and then followed him far enough so he wouldn't see me in the rearview mirror. They pulled into the parking lot of the Duke Steakhouse, parked, kissed, and then got out of the car and entered the restaurant. I was familiar with the location of the Duke and knew that there was no way I could follow them and go unnoticed, so I found a parking spot where I could see Sam's car, and then settled down to wait. When they got out, they got in the car and hugged for about 5 minutes, and then I followed them to the Barn, which was a country western restaurant with a live band. As with the Duke, I was familiar with the inside of the barn, and knew that there was no place where I could sit and not be seen, so I parked again where I could keep an eye on Sam's car and settled down to wait. They stayed there for 2.5 hours, and when they came out, I followed them again. This time, they went to the Saddle Tree Motel. Sam checked in at the front desk, and then Sam and Audrey entered room 107. I gave them 15 minutes to figure out what they were no doubt there for. Then I walked over to Sam's car and let the air out of all 4 tires, then came back, got into my car, and waited for them to get out. I wanted to see how Sam would handle 4 wheels at 1:30 in the morning. While I was waiting, I wondered why, since I wasn't expected for 2 more days, they didn't use the bed in the apartment. And then I realized that they couldn't do it because of Eva, Audrey's sister. And Sam sure as hell couldn't have taken Audrey home with him because Mom and Dad would have known since he was still living at home. Anyway, sort of. There was an apartment above the garage, and that's where he lived. And the apartment could be seen from the kitchen window, and Mom or Dad would damn sure recognize Audrey. I was also wondering how it started and how long it lasted. I usually went out of town every 4 to 5 weeks or so, and I was wondering if she did the same thing every time I left. After a couple of hours, I resigned myself to the fact that they stayed there overnight, stopped my surveillance, and headed to the apartment. When I saw the sign Village Inn, I decided to stop for breakfast. I parked and went to the door just as Rachel was unlocking the door. I met Audrey in my senior year of college. She was a sophomore, and normally we probably would never have met since we didn't have classes or friends in common. It was a Friday night fraternity sorority event that brought us together. Besides the members of my fraternity, there were members of other fraternities. Halfway to the party, I was heading to the bathroom and had just reached the top of the stairs when I heard, "Let me go." I turned the corner at the top of the stairs and saw a guy dragging a girl into one of the bedrooms. He was not a member of my fraternity, and I did not know him, but I knew that I was responsible for ensuring that his actions did not bring our house into disrepute, so I approached him and told him to let the girl go. He turned to me and said, "Fuck off, it's none of your business. Where I grew up, no one took the time to teach you the Marquess of Queensberry rules. Our rules were, hit first, hit hard, fall to the ground, and don't let me get up." The word case was still in the air when I hit him in the balls with my knee, and when he bent at the waist, I hit him hard in the head with my elbow. You can hurt your hand if you hit without soft gloves. And he fell. I turned to ask the girl if she was okay, but all I saw was her ass as she hurried down the stairs. I shrugged and went to the bathroom. When I came out, the guy was sitting there shaking his head to try to clear it up. I went downstairs, called a couple of brothers, told them what had happened, and we went up to get the guy out of the house. Ben recognized him and went to get a couple of his fraternity brothers to take care of him. I looked around for the girl, but I didn't find her, and after a couple of days, I forgot about this episode. 3 weeks later, I was sitting at a table at Annie's Cafe having lunch when a girl came up to me and asked if she could join me. She seemed vaguely familiar to me, so I invited her to sit down. She saw me trying to recognize her and said, "You don't remember me, do you?" "You seem familiar to me, but I can't remember you." "A party at the Kappa house. You saved me from that Neanderthal. I didn't get a good look at you, and when I looked for you after it was over, you were gone. I should have thanked you, but I got scared and ran away. Then I got the story. She didn't really want to come to the party because she had heard scary stories about what happened at fraternity parties. But the girls from her sorority convinced her that nothing like this had ever happened in Kappa. So she went, and everything was fine until she needed to go to the bathroom. The guy caught her coming out of the bathroom, called her a teaser, and said he was going to teach her a lesson. Then you showed up and saved me. So what did you do that made him think you were a tease and teasing him?" "Nothing. I was just trying to be friendly with everyone who was there. Earlier in the evening, a guy molested me, and I made it clear to him that I wasn't interested, but I can't think of anything I could do that could be interpreted as teasing. I should have thanked you for coming to my rescue, but at that time, all I could think about was getting the hell out of there and getting as far away from this place as possible. This is the first time I've seen you since then, so I came over to express my belated gratitude to you. Oh, and by the way, my name is Audrey." "Well, Miss Audrey, I accept your belated gratitude, but if you're really grateful, I think you should go on a date with me. At least once." "I would like that. When? Are you free tonight?" "Yes. Will it be okay at 6? "Great. That date led to many others, and by the time I graduated 3 months later, we were a steady couple. We started making love after our 10th date. Neither of us was a virgin, so there was no awkwardness. We seemed to have a very good time together. I found out that Audrey had a strange side to her character. She liked making love in places where there was some risk of being noticed. We were never caught, but it was close to that a couple of times. She met my family for the first time at a prom party my parents threw for me. Mom and Dad immediately became attached to her, and my brother Sam couldn't seem to take his eyes off her. I didn't think about it at the time. Audrey was a beautiful girl, and I was used to men watching her and wanting her to belong to them. Before I wanted to take Audrey home, my sister took me aside and said, "You're very lucky, bro. Don't let her go." That night, when I took Audrey back to the dorm, I proposed to her, and she said, "Yes, but not before I graduate. As soon as I get my degree, I'll walk down the aisle to you." I thought it was wise, even if I didn't want to wait that long. I hadn't found a job yet, so I went with Audrey when she went home for the summer and spent a week with her family. I liked her parents and her younger sister Eva, and they seemed to like me. At the end of the visit, I went home to start looking for a job. Audrey stayed with her parents until the end of the summer holidays, so I was pretty much able to fully focus on finding a job. Luck was on my side, and I found a good job a week after I started looking. Along with my new job, I changed my lifestyle. It's time for me to cut the apron strings, so to speak. I lived at home, and now that I had a job, it was time for me to find my own place. My graduation gift from my parents was a check for $10,000, and I used part of it to pay the rent for the first and last month of rent and a security deposit. I used some of the rest to decorate the apartment. I talked to Audrey almost every night, and when I told her about my new job, I kept quiet about the apartment, intending to surprise her with it when she returned to school. Audrey returned to school 3 days before the start of classes. I met her at the airport and went to the apartment. When I parked in the parking lot, she asked, "Why are you staying here?" I thought that since we haven't made love in over a month, you might want to try my new bed. "Your new bed?" "Yeah, I live here now." Once inside, I led her through the rooms, leaving the bedroom for last. Once in the bedroom, I casually mentioned that there was enough room in the closet for her things and that there were still 3 empty drawers in the dresser. "Of course, if you'd rather live in a dorm than here with me, I'm sure I can fill them with something." "When can I move in?" "Well, I think we could go get your stuff now instead of making love now and then going after your stuff." Oh, shit. Decisions, what the hell? I think since we're already here, we could make love first. After a few times, we snuggled up to each other and fell asleep. The next day, Audrey drove me to work and left my car to move her things from the sorority house to the apartment. We stopped and had dinner after she picked me up from work, and then we went back to the apartment, and she did everything she could to make me powerless. The next year passed as we adjusted to each other's almost constant presence. As with all new full-time partnerships, there were glitches along the way. Audrey was still a full-time student and had to work with class schedules, projects, and study groups, and she still belonged to her sorority and had to attend their events. For my part, I sometimes had to work late, work on Saturdays, and occasionally go out of town on business. But we did it, and it gave us a very good idea of what life would be like when we got married. Audrey still insisted that the marriage would not take place until she graduated from high school. I didn't care, because as far as I could tell, we were already married and just didn't have time to get the paperwork done. I had a little earned vacation, so when the summer holidays came, I was able to go to her house with Audrey for a week, and then I had to get back to work. I spent a pretty miserable 5 weeks alone. We actually talked on the phone 2 or 3 times a week, and we exchanged a hell of a lot of "I love you" and "I miss you." When Audrey returned 2 weeks before class started, we spent most of our time in the bedroom trying to catch up. One of those nights when I was lying next to her, tired as hell from what she had just put me through, and when her hand was working trying to lift me up one more time, she said, "I need a favor. I need a really big favor. After what you just did to me, I don't think I can refuse you anything." "What's the matter?" "My sister Eva will arrive on Saturday. She will start her first academic year. Do you mind if she stays here with us until she gets back on her feet?" I liked Eva, and since the spare bedroom wasn't being used, I had no reason not to let Eva use it. We met Eva at the airport and arranged for her to stay with us. Some changes have been made to the way Audrey and I lived. The adjustments needed for Eva to be with us, but things soon got better for us. Eva was a very beautiful young lady, and it wasn't long before she started dating, and the fact that she went on dates gave Audrey and me a lot of time alone. And then the trip began, which allowed me to return home 2 days earlier. I froze over my breakfast. I needed to go home, take a shower, and get ready for work, but I wanted to give Eva enough time to go to class. If she was still there when I got there, my natural question for her, of course, would be, "Where's Audrey?" which would drag her into all of this. But then it was probably already in full swing. She knows I was supposed to be out, and she knows Audrey didn't come home last night, and I'm sure she's smart enough to put 2 and 2 together and come up with the right answer. But then again, maybe Audrey gave Eve a perfectly good excuse, but it didn't matter what story Audrey told Eve because I knew the true story. Among the thoughts I had during breakfast was what I was going to do now. That Audrey was a story was self-evident, but what was the mechanics of breaking up supposed to be? A confrontation? Or just pack her things, put them outside, and not bother talking to her? Then, of course, there was my brother. What was I supposed to do with him? This was a much harder question to answer because no matter what I did to him, it would inevitably involve my parents. They will almost certainly want to know why my relationship with Sam has changed. They'll want to know why I won't be attending family gatherings if Sam is there, and I'll have to tell them. I wouldn't lie to them to let them know the cold, harsh truth. I didn't stay long enough, and Eva was still there when I got home. I saw the expression on her face. It turned pale, but I always thought it was a figure of speech until I walked in and Eva saw me. Her face really turned pale, and that told me she knew what Audrey was doing. What she didn't know was that I already knew what was going on, so my question is, how long has she been doing this? Caught her completely off guard. She was expecting the question, "Where is Audrey?" and was probably already trying to come up with a good answer to that question. My question told her that no lie would work, and I could see from her face that she understood it, but I wasn't ready for her answer. As far as I know, she never stopped. She never stopped? What does it mean? She had regular boyfriends throughout high school, and she cheated on each of them. When you came home with her for the summer, she behaved decently. But as soon as you left, she started dating guys she had known since high school. I don't know much about it. I know for a fact that every time you go on a trip, she meets someone. Sometimes she comes home at night, but usually she's not home by the time I leave for school. I was going to say something like, "I thought you liked me enough to let me know what was going on," but I quickly realized how stupid that question would be. He and Audrey were family, and the old saying that blood is thicker than water would be true in this case. I suppose now that you know you're going to kick her out? You're thinking right. What is my time frame? Your time frame? How much time do I have to find a place to stay? Spend as much time as you want. I'm kicking your sister out, not you. I know it might make your relationship with her a little awkward because you're here after she leaves, But I don't see any reason to punish you for what she did. How you decide this with Audrey is up to you, but she won't be here when you get home from class. I'm going to pack all her things and put them outside so she can see them when she finally gets home. I went to the kitchen to get the garbage bags, and when I came out, Eva had already left for class. It only took me an hour to get Audrey's entire presence out of the apartment. Knowing that Audrey's first class wouldn't start until 10:15 today, and assuming she'd come home before going to class, I settled in to wait for her to show up. She arrived at 9:40 and was surprised to see me. She came up to me and bent down to kiss me and then asked, "When did you get home?" "Last night." "Why didn't you call me?" "I called, but you still haven't answered." "Oh, shit." I turned off my phone so that we wouldn't be disturbed while we were studying. "While we were studying? Who are we?" "Some girls from my management and economics class. It was a kind of overnight study." The lie slipped off her tongue easily, and if I hadn't seen what she did with my own eyes, I probably would have believed her. And then she asked, "What are those garbage bags by the door? These are all your things." "My things?" "Yes, Audrey, your things. I'm kicking you out of the apartment and out of my life." "You're not serious, are you? We love each other." "I can't speak for your lying ass, but my love for you died last night when I watched you and my asshole brother walk into room 107 at Saddletree. I got home just in time to see you getting into Sam's car and then making out with a guy you told me you just couldn't stand because he was arrogant. After seeing this, I just had to follow you to see what was going on." She paused and looked at me for a few seconds and then said, "Flat tires, was it you?" I just nodded my head in the affirmative. "Would I be wasting my time if I told you that you're the only one I love?" "You'd be right about that. I don't care why it happened. The only thing that matters is that you did it. I'm just glad I found out about you before I married you." When I said that, her whole demeanor changed. She grinned at me and said, "I never intended to marry you. You were just something that helped me get through school. A constant and reliable power supply that will help me get through this. You're not making enough money." And with that, she turned and headed for the door. When she came to the door, she turned to me, gave me the finger, said, "Fuck you," and then she left. I took a shower and then slept for a couple of hours before getting up and going to work to turn in the paperwork for my trip. Then I went home, and when I got there, I saw that all of Audrey's things were gone. I cooked a meal from leftovers in the fridge, and then decided to end the next unpleasant routine on my list. I went to my parents, planning to visit my brother's apartment above the garage, and let him know how unhappy I was with him. I went to the door and knocked. After about a minute, Sam opened the door, and when he saw that it was me, he smiled and invited me in. The smile told me that Audrey hadn't called him to tell him they'd been caught. As a result, the smile was still on Sam's face when my right hand hit him in the jaw. He staggered back and I followed him, kicking him in the balls. He fell to the floor, and I kicked him a couple more times, and then I looked down at him and said, "In case you haven't figured it out yet, I know about you and Audrey. This is just an example of what I will do to you whenever you come near me from now on. I reserve the right for you to explain to Mom and Dad why I never come to family celebrations when you're there." I turned and left the apartment, leaving Sam lying on the floor, gasping for air. When I got home, Eva was sitting at the kitchen table doing her homework. She looked up when I came in and said, "You did it. You really did it. You threw her out of here. Didn't I mean it when I told you I was going to do it? I knew you were upset, but I thought that since you love each other, you'd sort it out somehow. Not in this life, honey." She called me. She wanted to know where I was going to live when you kicked me out. She couldn't believe you'd let me stay. I shrugged my shoulders and said, "It's been a long, hard day, and I'm going to take a shower and go to bed." And I left her with her homework. And it's been a long, hard day. It's only been a little over 24 hours since I found out what was going on and before I got into the shower. You would have thought that after the day I went through, I would have trouble sleeping, but I slept like a log. In the morning, I woke up from a conversation. I went into the kitchen and found Sam drinking coffee with Eva. "What the fuck are you doing here?" I growled at him. "We need to talk, brother." "Why would I want to talk to a bastard like you? I need to tell you what happened." "And do you think it will matter?" "You don't understand. I had to do it." "Did you have to do that?" "That's what I need to hear." Eva stood up and said, "I'll leave you two to do it. I have to go to class and she's gone." As soon as she walked out the door, Sam said, "Audrey made me do it." "Oh, for Christ's sake, Sam, do you think I'm going to believe that kind of nonsense?" It's true. She caught me doing something I needed to hide and threatened to expose me in front of Mom and Dad if I didn't do what she wanted. What could it be? Fucking little boys? Close, but no, not that. Close? She caught me kissing a guy. I'm a BI bro. I'm going both ways. I'm not the only one she cheated on you with. It happened during your trip to Baltimore. I was at a party hosted by a couple I knew. It was a party for like-minded people, and I was there with a guy I know when she walked in with another guy I know who goes both ways. She pretended not to know me, and we avoided each other all night, but it was impossible to ignore what she was doing. Half an hour after the party started, she was already pulling the train. Every guy there except me has used it at least twice, and some have used it 3 times. The next day she called me and said we needed to talk. We met at Bud's bar, and she told me everything. I do what she wanted and when she wanted, otherwise she would have given me away to Mom and Dad. I couldn't let that happen. Mom would probably accept it even if she didn't like it, but you know Dad. There was no way in the world I could let him know about it. That woman was one sick cheater, bro. She enjoyed being able to control me. She didn't like me, but she enjoyed being able to make me do whatever she wanted. You have no idea how many hours I've spent trying to figure out a way to tell you what a cheater she was without exposing herself. And now I'm waiting for her to tell Mom and Dad just out of pure vindictiveness. At least you got rid of her. Audrey never called my parents, and Sam and I managed to mend our relationship. Eva lived with me for another 7 months, and no, I never touched her. Although Audrey continued to try to get her to join a sorority and live in a dorm, but Eva did not want to participate in such a life. She eventually found a nice guy and moved in with him, but we remained good friends. I lost track of Audrey after I kicked her out, and a couple of times Eva tried to tell me about Audrey, but I refused to talk about it. And soon she got a message that I didn't want to hear a single word about anything involving her sister. Well, that's not exactly true. She told me about one thing Audrey was going to do, and I'm glad she did it. I managed to get inside without anyone recognizing me, and I sat in the back. This was my big chance to get back at Audrey, and I almost wet my pants waiting for when I could do it. I looked at the guy standing there and guessed that he must have the money Audrey needed. I was really trembling in anticipation when this moment came and I heard, "If there is anyone here who knows why these 2 people should not be united by holy matrimony, let them speak now or shut up forever." I stood up and said, "Yes, there is. While she was engaged to me, she cheated on me with my own brother, and when I was out of town on business, she pulled trains with a bunch of guys." I turned to face the future groom and addressed him personally. "If you want to marry this cheater, that's your business. Just remember the axiom that once a cheater always remains a cheater." And then, taking advantage of the stunned silence, I left the church with my head held high and a wide smile on my face, past Audrey sprawled on the floor, sobbing in pain and humiliation. Life is beautiful and goes on,